In the depths of Nabari, a secluded village in Uganda surrounded by vast fields of acacia trees and golden savanna, the cries of a woman in labor pierced the quiet night. Adissa, a vibrant young woman with wide, expressive eyes, had arrived at the modest hospital hours earlier, clutching her swollen belly with a mixture of hope and trepidation. She was accompanied by her aging mother, Amara, who whispered words of encouragement in their native Luganda as they walked through the wooden doors of the facility. Inside, the hospital was humble but functional, its dimly lit corridors filled with the faint smell of antiseptics and kerosene. The only source of light in the delivery room came from a flickering kerosene lamp, casting long, uncertain shadows on the walls. The midwife, Naya, an experienced and composed elder, prepared herself for what she believed would be another routine delivery. Her steady hands and calm presence had brought hundreds of babies into the world, each a testament to her unwavering dedication. As Adissa's contractions intensified, beads of sweat formed on her brow, and her cries grew louder, echoing through the simple structure. Naya murmured soothing words, her voice a steady anchor amidst the rising tension. "Breathe, Adissa. You are strong, and your child is coming soon." The young woman gripped the edge of the bed, her knuckles white with effort, as she pushed with all her might. Moments later, the baby began to emerge, and Naya's practiced hands guided the new life into the world. But as the infant's tiny form was fully revealed, Naya's confident demeanor faltered for the first time in years. Her sharp intake of breath was almost inaudible, yet it hung heavy in the air. The baby's skin was unlike anything she had ever seen. Smooth yet textured, shimmering faintly under the dim light, with scale-like patches that seemed almost otherworldly. A young nurse named Zuberi, who had been assisting Naya, froze in place. His wide eyes betrayed a mixture of awe and fear as he whispered, "Is this a curse?" His words, though quiet, reverberated in the minds of everyone present. The room fell silent, save for the newborn's faint cries. Naya's gaze hardened, and she turned sharply towards Zuberi, her voice firm but measured. "This child is as human as any of us. Speak no such nonsense. We are here to ensure he thrives." Adissa, exhausted but alert, strained to see her child. Her trembling voice broke through the silence. "What's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything? Is my baby okay?" Naya hesitated for a fraction of a second, then approached her with the infant wrapped in a soft, worn cloth. She knelt beside Adissa, gently placing the baby in her arms. "Your child is healthy and strong, but his skin, it is unique." Adissa stared at her son, her breath catching as she took in his delicate features and the peculiar patterns on his skin. Her voice wavered, filled with a mixture of love and uncertainty. "Why does he look like this? What does it mean?" Naya placed a reassuring hand on Adissa's shoulder, her eyes steady and resolute. "It means he is special. The world may not understand, but he is a blessing, Adissa. Do not let fear cloud your heart." Outside the room, Amara paced nervously, her ear pressed to the door. She had heard the whispers, the murmurs of disbelief, and her heart ached with worry for her daughter and grandchild. When Naya finally stepped out, Amara rushed to her, desperation in her voice. "Naya, what is happening? Is my grandson well?" Naya placed a comforting hand on Amara's arm, her tone firm yet kind. "Your grandson is healthy, Amara, but his skin is unlike anything we have seen. This does not make him any less worthy of love." As the news of the unusual birth spread through the hospital, it began to ripple beyond its walls, carried by whispers and hurried conversations among the staff. Some spoke of miracles, others of curses, and a few simply remained silent, their faces etched with unease. But within the delivery room, Adissa clung tightly to her son, her resolve growing with each passing moment. Despite the uncertainty, she could feel his warmth, his life, and she knew she would protect him fiercely. Naya returned to the room, her expression softening as she approached Adissa once more. "You will name him, won't you?" she asked gently. Adissa looked down at her son, tracing her fingers along the edge of his tiny face. "Baraka," she said softly, the word carrying the weight of her hope. "It means blessing." Naya nodded, a faint smile breaking through her otherwise stoic face. "Baraka it is, and he will be a blessing, no matter what the world may fake." The first cries of dawn began to creep through the windows as the sun painted the horizon in hues of gold and crimson. Outside, the world stirred with new life. But within the modest walls of the hospital, a story had just begun. One that would challenge beliefs, ignite fears, and ultimately change lives forever. Naya sat quietly by the bedside, her weathered hands resting gently on her lap. The soft glow of the morning sun began to filter through the thin curtains, illuminating the room with a pale, warm light. Adissa lay, cradling her newborn, her body still trembling from exhaustion. Her eyes, red from tears and sleepless hours, shifted nervously between the child in her arms and the midwife who had just delivered him. Baraka's skin shimmered faintly under the sunlight, the scale-like patterns catching every beam as though they held secrets of their own. The silence between the women grew heavy, broken only by the soft coos of the baby and the distant hum of life outside the modest hospital walls. Adissa's voice, barely above a whisper, carried the weight of her fear. "Naya, what have I done wrong? Why does my child look like this?" She paused, her voice cracking under the pressure of unspoken fears. "What will the village think of him, of me?" Her words were heavy with dread, an echo of the centuries-old beliefs that governed their community. Naya, composed as ever, reached out and placed a steady hand on Adissa's shoulder, her touch firm yet comforting. The midwife's voice was a stark contrast to the young mother's trembling tone, strong, unwavering, and filled with quiet authority. "Adissa, you have done nothing wrong. This child, your son, is not a curse. He is a blessing." Adissa looked down at Baraka, her emotions swirling in a tempest of love, fear, and confusion. Naya leaned in closer, her sharp gaze softening as she studied the young mother. "In our traditions, we often look for answers in the unknown, but sometimes the unknown is not something to fear. Baraka is unique. His life will not be easy, but it will be meaningful. He is not less because he is different." Naya's words were spoken with conviction, but even she could feel the weight of what they were about to face. The village of Nabari was a place steeped in traditions and deeply rooted beliefs. Any deviation from the norm was often met with fear and suspicion. Whispers of superstitions had already begun to spread among the hospital staff, their hushed voices carrying into the corridors. It was only a matter of time before the news reached the village elders, and with it, the judgment of a community bound by ancient customs. Adissa's tears began to fall once more, but this time they carried a hint of hope amidst the sorrow. She clutched Baraka tighter, as if shielding him from a world she knew would not be kind. Naya watched her closely, her own heart heavy with the responsibility she had taken upon herself. She knew this child would need protection, not just from the outside world, but from the whispers of those too afraid to see beyond the surface. She had delivered hundreds of babies, but none had ever challenged her as Baraka would. Naya rose from her seat, her movements deliberate and calm. She walked to a small wooden table where her satchel lay, its contents a mixture of medicinal herbs and carefully preserved medical tools. From it, she pulled out a soft piece of fabric, woven with intricate patterns that told the stories of her own lineage. She returned to Adissa, draping the cloth gently over Baraka. "This child," she began, her voice firm and deliberate, "will grow knowing he is loved. The world may not understand him, but we will teach them. He is not an anomaly. He is Baraka, a blessing, and blessings are not hidden. They are cherished." Adissa nodded, her resolve beginning to solidify under Naya's guidance. Yet, the fear in her eyes was not entirely gone. "But how will we face them, Naya? The elders, the people? They won't see what you see." Naya straightened, her gaze sharp and determined. "Then we will show them. We will show them that what they fear is not to be avoided but embraced. Baraka's life will be his own story, not one dictated by fear or ignorance." Outside, the muffled sounds of the bustling village began to creep into the room. The day had begun, and with it came the certainty that the whispers of Baraka's birth would soon grow louder. Naya knew that every step forward would require strength, not just her own, but Adissa's as well. She turned back to the young mother, her voice softening but losing none of its resolve. "Adissa, you are his mother. He will look to you to learn what it means to be strong. And when the world challenges him, He will remember the strength he saw in your eyes. The two women sat in silence for a moment longer, the weight of their shared understanding hanging in the air. Naya's thoughts raced as she began to plan her next steps. She would consult Dr. Abani, the traveling physician who occasionally visited Nabari, in hopes of finding a medical explanation for Baraka's condition. She would speak to the elders, not with fear, but with the wisdom she had earned through decades of service. And above all, she would protect Baraka in Odisha, no matter the cost. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its golden light across the fields and rooftops of Nabari, Naya felt a quiet determination settle within her. Baraka's life would not be defined by the fears of others. He was, as his name declared, a blessing, and she would ensure the world came to see it as she did. The news of Baraka's birth spread like wildfire through Nabari, carried by whispers that swirled from the hospital corridors into the narrow dirt paths of the village. Women gathering water by the well spoke in hushed tones, their voices trembling with a mix of awe and fear. Elders seated beneath the towering baobab tree exchanged knowing glances, their words heavy with speculation. Some insisted Baraka's arrival was an omen, a sign that the ancestors were displeased, while others argued he was a harbinger of prosperity, sent to guide the community toward an unknown destiny. The village, once unified by shared traditions and beliefs, was now fractured by the weight of Baraka's existence. Odisha felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on her like the midday sun. Every glance in her direction carried the sting of unspoken accusations. Every whispered word felt like a blade cutting through her resolve. She retreated to the safety of her home, a modest clay hut with a thatched roof that had once been a place of comfort. Now, it felt like a fortress against a world she no longer recognized. Inside, she held Baraka close, her heart pounding with an ache that words could not describe. His skin, shimmering with its unusual patterns, was soft beneath her fingers, a reminder of his innocence amidst the chaos. Naya, on the other hand, refused to let fear dictate her actions. She had seen the way the village looked to her for guidance, even in their suspicion. Her years of wisdom and service as a midwife had earned her respect, and she intended to use that respect to protect Baraka and his mother. Determined to find answers, she set out to consult the elders, those whose knowledge of traditions and lore might shed light on the child's condition. She approached them one by one, seeking their counsel, but their responses were as divided as the village itself. Elder Zawadi, a soft-spoken woman known for her deep connection to spiritual rituals, shook her head solemnly when Naya posed her question. The ancestors speak in ways we do not always understand. Perhaps this child is a warning, Naya, or perhaps he is a test of our faith. Either way, his presence will bring change, and change is never without cost. But Elder Kamal, a man whose voice carried the weight of authority, was less sympathetic. At a hastily arranged village meeting, he stood before the gathered crowd, his tall frame casting a shadow over the worried faces. Naya, he began, his tone sharp and unyielding. You are respected among us, but this child's presence brings unease. He is unlike any we have seen before. What if he brings misfortune to our people? What if the crops fail or sickness spreads? His words were met with murmurs of agreement, the fear in the air palpable. Naya stood her ground, her voice cutting through the noise with unwavering strength. Baraka is not a curse. He is not a sign of misfortune. He is a child, innocent and full of life, and he needs our love, not our fear. Have we forgotten who we are as a community? We are the ones who welcome new life, who protect our own. If we turn our backs on him, we turn our backs on what makes us human. Her words hung in the air, their truth undeniable, yet the unease lingered. The villagers were torn, their hearts pulled between Naya's conviction and the deep-rooted beliefs that had guided them for generations. Odisha's absence from the meeting was another blow to her case. Many saw her retreat as an admission of guilt, a sign that even she feared what her child represented. Naya, undeterred, expanded her search for answers beyond Nabari. She traveled to neighboring villages, speaking with healers, spiritual leaders, and anyone who might offer insight. In one village, she met a man named Kofi, a traveling herbalist who claimed to have seen a child with similar skin many years ago. The boy was strong, he told her, his voice tinged with memory. He grew up to be a healer himself, using the plants of the forest to cure ailments no one else could. People feared him at first, but they came to see his value. Perhaps Baraka is meant for something great. Naya held onto those words, carrying them back to Nabari like a precious gift. But even as she shared what she had learned, the village remained divided. The fractures in the community deepened, with some offering support to Odessa in quiet defiance of the elders, while others avoided her altogether, their fear outweighing their compassion. Odessa, hidden away in her hut, heard the murmurs outside her door. She clung to Baraka, his soft coos the only comfort she could find. Her mind raced with questions she could not answer. Would she ever be able to walk freely among her people again? Would Baraka grow up surrounded by love, or would he always be seen as an outsider? Her heart ached for the life she had envisioned for him, a life that now seemed impossibly far away. Naya visited her often, bringing food and words of encouragement. On one such visit, she knelt beside Odessa, her hands clasped tightly around the young mother's. "I know you were scared," Naya said softly, her voice filled with empathy. "But you are not alone in this. Baraka is not alone. We will face this together, one step at a time." Outside, the village remained at a crossroads, its people grappling with the weight of their beliefs and the reality of the child in their midst. The elders continued to debate, the whispers grew louder, and the tension hung heavy in the air. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was a flicker of hope, a glimmer of possibility that the village might find a way to see Baraka not as a curse, but as the blessing his name proclaimed him to be. Naya sat in her small hut, the faint glow of a single oil lamp illuminating her determined expression. The whispers of the village were growing louder, more insistent, and she knew that fear unchecked would only fester into something far worse. Baraka's shimmering skin had become a symbol of division, but Naya believed it could become something else entirely. If only she could find the answers to calm the storm of superstition. Her mind turned to Dr. Abney, the traveling doctor who visited rural clinics across the region. If anyone could offer insight, it would be her. The journey to contact Dr. Abney was not an easy one. Naya walked for miles through dense vegetation, her steps steady and purposeful despite the weight of her mission. Along the way, she passed villagers who greeted her with curious or weary expressions, their unspoken questions hanging heavy in the air. By the time she reached the neighboring town, the sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. Dr. Abney, a poised and knowledgeable woman in her 40s, greeted Naya with a warm but concerned smile. Naya wasted no time explaining the situation, her words laced with urgency and conviction. "There is a child, born with a skin condition unlike anything I've seen. The villagers are frightened, and the mother is isolated. I need your expertise to help them see the truth." Dr. Abney listened intently, her sharp eyes betraying both curiosity and compassion. Without hesitation, she agreed to accompany Naya back to Nabari, bringing with her a small bag of medical tools and reference materials. When they arrived at Odessa's hut, the young mother greeted them with visible relief, though her face still bore the signs of sleepless nights and relentless worry. Dr. Abney examined Baraka carefully, her touch gentle and her expression focused. The child, seemingly unbothered by the attention, cooed softly as the doctor inspected his unique skin. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Abney finally spoke, her voice steady and reassuring. "This is not magic or a curse. Baraka's condition appears to be a rare genetic mutation. It could be linked to environmental factors or something in his ancestry. But he is healthy, and there is nothing to fear." The weight of those words seemed to lift a heavy burden from Odessa's shoulders, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. "What will I tell the villagers?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They won't believe me. They'll only see what they've always feared." Dr. Abney met her gaze with quiet determination. "The truth can be difficult to accept, but it is always worth telling. We will help them understand." Naya and Dr. Abney began to devise a plan. They would organize a gathering in the village square, a chance for Dr. Abney to explain Baraka's condition and address the fears that had taken root in the community. Naya, ever the mediator, approached the village elders to propose the idea. As expected, the suggestion was met with resistance. Elder Kamau, still wary of the unknown, voiced his concerns openly. "Naya, you ask us to set aside our traditions for the word of a stranger. How can we trust what she says when the signs point to something unnatural?" Naya held her ground, her voice unwavering. "Kamau, we have always relied on wisdom to guide us, and wisdom comes in many forms. Dr. Abney's knowledge does not diminish our traditions. It adds to them. If we let fear govern us, we risk losing our humanity. Baraka is not a threat. He is a child, and he deserves a chance to grow without the weight of our fears." The tension in the room was palpable, but eventually, the elders agreed to the gathering. News of the meeting spread quickly, and by the following evening, the village square was filled with curious and anxious faces. The air buzzed with quiet chatter, punctuated by the occasional cry of a baby or the distant sound of livestock. Dr. Abney stood at the center of the crowd, her calm demeanor commanding attention. She began to speak, her voice clear and deliberate as she explained Baraka's condition in terms the villagers could understand. "This child's skin is unique," she began, gesturing toward Baraka, who sat cradled in Adissa's arms. "It is the result of a rare genetic trait, not unlike the way some of us have different hair textures or eye colors. There is nothing harmful about it, and it does not mean he is cursed or dangerous. What's important now is that we ensure he is loved and cared for." The villagers listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity. Dr. Abney continued, addressing their fears directly. "I know change is difficult. I know the unknown can be frightening. But Baraka is not the first child to be born different, and he will not be the last. What matters is how we choose to respond. Will we let fear divide us? Or will we come together to support one of our own?" For a moment, there was silence. Then, a woman from the crowd stepped forward, a weaver named Zuri, known for her kind heart and sharp wit. She looked at Adissa and Baraka, her eyes softening as she spoke. "If the doctor says he is healthy, then who are we to say otherwise? This child may look different, but he is still one of us. He deserves our love, not our fear." Her words seemed to break the tension, and others began to murmur their agreement. Naya watched with quiet pride as the tide of opinion began to shift. The journey was far from over, but this moment felt like a small victory. Dr. Abney's presence had planted a seed of understanding, one that Naya hoped would grow into acceptance in the days to come. The village square was alive with murmurs, a restless energy coursing through the gathered crowd. The air was thick with anticipation, carrying the earthy scent of the nearby river and the faint tang of burning firewood. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces lit with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Elders sat in a semicircle under the sprawling branches of the baobab tree, their expressions guarded, their silence heavy with judgment. Adissa stood near the center, her arms cradling Baraka protectively, the child's shimmering skin catching the golden hues of the setting sun. Beside her, Naya stood tall, her presence a quiet yet commanding force. On her other side was Dr. Abney, her confident demeanor a sharp contrast to the unease rippling through the crowd. Dr. Abney began to speak, her voice cutting through the noise with clarity and resolve. "Many of you have heard stories, rumors about this child. Some of you believe he is a curse, a warning from the ancestors. Others think he may be an omen of prosperity. But let me tell you what I know, not from fear or superstition, but from knowledge and study." She paused, letting her words settle. The crowd leaned in, their whispers fading as curiosity took hold. Baraka's condition is not magic. It is not a curse. It is a rare genetic trait, one that makes his skin appear as it does. But beneath this, he is just like any other child. He is healthy, he is strong, and most importantly, he is human. Adissa tightened her hold on Baraka, her heart pounding as she scanned the faces around her. Some villagers nodded, their skepticism softening, while others remained stiff and wary. Elder Kamau, his deep voice breaking the fragile quiet, rose to his feet. "Dr. Abney, we respect your knowledge. But why would the ancestors allow such a child to be born among us? Surely there is meaning in his difference, something beyond what science can explain." The crowd murmured in agreement, and for a moment, doubt threatened to reclaim the space that knowledge had begun to fill. Naya stepped forward, her voice steady and deliberate. each word carrying the weight of her years of wisdom. "Kamau, you speak of the ancestors testing us. Perhaps you were right, but not in the way you think. Perhaps this test is not for Baraka, but for us. They are asking if we can see beyond what frightens us, if we can rise above fear and show love to someone who is different." A hush fell over the square, the silence stretching as her words sank in. Naya turned to the villagers, her gaze sweeping across them. "We have always been a community that prides itself on unity, on strength in times of hardship. Have we forgotten that strength now, when it is needed most? Baraka is not a threat to us. He's a child born into our care, and it is our duty, not just as neighbors, but as human beings, to protect him." Adissa felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest, tears brimming in her eyes as she looked at Naya. Baraka, nestled against her, let out a soft coo, his tiny fingers grasping at the fabric of her shawl. The sound, innocent and pure, seemed to pierce the tension hanging over the crowd. Slowly, Zuri, the weaver who had spoken in support of Baraka before, stepped forward once again. Her weathered hands held a small basket, woven with intricate patterns. She approached Adissa, her movements deliberate, her expression resolute. A child is not defined by how they look, but by how they are raised. If we turn away from him, we fail not just Baraka, but ourselves. Zuri placed the basket at Adissa's feet, its contents revealed to be a bundle of soft cloths and dried herbs. Her gesture seemed to break the invisible barrier holding the villagers back. One by one, others stepped forward, some with gifts, freshly harvested maize, a carved wooden toy, a warm blanket, while others came with nothing but kind words and open hearts. "We will not let fear divide us," one man said, his voice carrying over the growing murmurs of support. "This child is one of us." Elder Kamau watched the scene unfold, his stern expression softening ever so slightly. Though he did not step forward, he did not speak against the tide either. Naya caught his eye, offering him a faint nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shift taking place. Dr. Abney, standing to the side, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Her work here was not done, but this moment was a victory. The square, once buzzing with tension, was now alive with a different kind of energy, a cautious but undeniable hope. Adissa looked down at Baraka, her tears falling freely now, though they carried relief instead of despair. Naya placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "This is just the beginning, Adissa. There will still be challenges, but you are not alone. Baraka is not alone." The sun dipped lower, casting the square in shades of amber and crimson. The villagers lingered, their conversations shifting from fearful speculation to quiet plans. How they might support Adissa, what could be done to ensure Baraka's safety and acceptance. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, one thing was clear: a step had been taken, one that could not be undone. The community had begun to move forward, led not by fear, but by the simple, powerful truth that love and understanding were stronger than any superstition. In the months that followed, Baraka's presence transformed Nabari. What once symbolized fear became a beacon of resilience and unity. His scaly, shimmering skin, once whispered about in hushed tones, became a source of inspiration for the villagers. Children played with him without hesitation, their laughter mingling with his as they chased one another through the dusty courtyards. Baraka's curiosity and joy were infectious, and soon the entire village came to see him as a reminder of the strength found in love and acceptance. Adissa, no longer weighed down by fear, found her voice within the community. She began to speak with other mothers, sharing her journey and encouraging them to embrace their children's uniqueness. "Our children are gifts, no matter how they come to us," she would say, her words laced with the conviction born from her struggles. Her newfound confidence inspired others, and her once quiet presence became a powerful force for change. Naya continued her work as a midwife, using Baraka's story as an example of compassion. In her travels to nearby villages, she shared his journey, teaching that understanding could triumph over fear. "We are stronger when we choose to love," she would say, her words resonating with those who heard them. Her efforts planted seeds of acceptance far beyond Nabari, spreading a message of hope to other communities. Even Elder Kamau, once the staunchest skeptic, softened with time. One day, as Baraka toddled past him, the elders stopped to watch. The boy's laughter filled the air, and Kamau found himself smiling despite his initial doubts. Perhaps, he muttered to himself, the ancestors send their lessons in ways we don't expect. Baraka's milestones became moments of celebration for the entire village. His first steps, marked by his unsteady wobble toward Adissa, drew cheers and smiles from those who had once turned away. His laughter became a symbol of the community's journey, a sound that reminded everyone of the power of unity and love. By the time Baraka began to walk confidently, Nabari was no longer the village it had been when he was born. It had grown stronger, kinder, and more open, and though his skin shimmered in the sunlight, what truly shone was the bond he had created among his people, a legacy that would endure far beyond his childhood, carried in the hearts of those who had learned to love without fear. If you enjoyed this video, please help us grow by subscribing to this humble channel. And if you'd like to watch more videos like this, we prepared the next video especially for you. Click here to watch.